The world has a way of testing your limits when you least expect it. Mark Donovan muttered to himself as he trudged up the steps to his porch, his muscles sore from the day's training. He had just completed a grueling workout, and all he wanted was a moment of peace before heading back into the chaos of his duties as an active-duty Navy SEAL. But what he found when he opened the door shattered his moment of calm. There, lying frozen on his porch in the thick blanket of snow, was a dog. The poor creature was clearly pregnant, its body rigid from the cold, barely breathing. Without a second thought, Mark's training kicked in, his instincts taking over. He rushed to the dog's side, lifting it gently into his arms and carrying it inside. He could feel its body trembling against his chest, and his heart ached with a deep sense of compassion. He set the dog down on a blanket by the fire, running to get a warm towel to try and bring some life back to its cold, lifeless body. As he worked, he couldn't help but wonder how the dog ended up here, so far from any place safe. Was it abandoned? Lost? Or had something worse happened? Hours passed, and the dog's temperature finally returned to normal. Mark sat by her side, exhausted but relieved. He stroked her fur, murmuring softly, hoping she could hear him. That's when he noticed it. On her collar, a name was engraved, and next to it, a small number. The name was Bella, and the number didn't make sense. Mark stared at it, confused. It looked like a phone number, but it was strange. Who would leave their dog in the snow like this? And why would they mark her with a number? His mind raced with questions, but before he could think too much, Bella stirred, lifting her head slightly. Mark smiled. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. He had saved her. For now, that was enough. But as the night wore on and Mark made plans to get Bella checked by a vet the next day, he had no idea that his life was about to take a dramatic turn. This wasn't just any dog, and the connection they had just formed wasn't random. It would lead him to uncover secrets that would change everything. As Mark gazed out of the window, the world outside seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Bella had a past, and somehow, Mark was part of her story now. He wasn't sure what was to come, but he had a feeling that this was no ordinary rescue. Mark sat in his living room, staring at Bella, who lay curled up by the fire. The soft crackling of the wood was the only sound breaking the silence. The storm outside had calmed, but the questions swirling in Mark's mind had only grown louder. Who would leave a pregnant dog in the snow like that? And why was she carrying a collar with a strange phone number etched on it? As Bella slept, Mark's eyes drifted to the phone on the table. He hesitated, his fingers hovering over it. Something told him that dialing the number might reveal more than he was ready for. But he couldn't ignore the pull. Slowly, he picked it up and dialed the number. The phone rang 3 times before it was answered. A woman's voice, warm but tired, greeted him. "Hello." "Hi." Mark started, unsure what to say. "I found your dog, Bella. She was left outside, frozen in the snow. Is everything okay?" There was a long pause on the other end. "Bella," the woman asked, her voice trembling. "Is she all right?" "She's okay for now," Mark replied, feeling a sudden wave of empathy for the woman. "But she's pregnant. You left her out there, and I'm not sure what happened." "Oh my God," the woman whispered. "I never meant for that to happen. I've been looking for her for days. She's mine. I didn't know where else to turn." Mark felt a wave of confusion. "What do you mean? Why would you leave her out there?" The woman sighed deeply. "It's a long story. A very long story," she said softly. "I don't know who else to trust. Can you meet me? Please. I need to see Bella." Mark agreed, sensing that the truth was about to unfold in ways he couldn't predict. The next morning, Mark and Bella drove to the location the woman had provided. It was a secluded property on the outskirts of town, a mansion hidden behind tall gates and trees. As they pulled up, Mark's heart began to race. There was something unsettling about the place. It was beautiful, but it seemed abandoned, as if the life that once filled it had long since faded. A tall woman stood by the door, her eyes red, as if she had been crying. She was older, perhaps in her 50s, with striking features that seemed to have been carved by time. Mark could see the desperation in her eyes as she rushed toward him. "Thank you for bringing her," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know where else to turn." As she knelt down to check on Bella, Mark noticed the fine clothes she wore, the expensive watch on her wrist, and the aura of wealth that surrounded her. But there was something else, a sadness in her eyes, a sorrow that spoke of a deeper story. "Who are you?" Mark asked, his curiosity getting the best of him. The woman paused, her fingers brushing Bella's fur. "My name is Evelyn, and Bella, she's part of something much bigger than either of us realize." Mark's heart skipped a beat. Something told him this wasn't just about a dog. This was the beginning of a much larger journey. The truth was finally starting to reveal itself, but it was only the beginning. Mark watched as Evelyn gently caressed Bella, her fingers trembling as she ran them over the dog's fur. "She's been through so much," Evelyn said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But she's special, Mark. She's more than just a dog." Mark felt his heart race as he tried to process the words she had just spoken. "What do you mean?" he asked, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Evelyn looked up at him, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "Bella is the key to everything. She's been passed down through generations of my family, but there's something more to her, something no one ever told me." Mark's confusion deepened, but he remained silent, waiting for her to explain. Evelyn stood and gestured for him to follow her inside the house. The mansion was old, with grand, dusty hallways and faded paintings on the walls. It looked like a place frozen in time, abandoned by the world outside. As they walked through the corridors, Evelyn led him to a room in the back, where an old wooden desk sat in the center. On the desk was a weather box, and beside it, a stack of papers. Evelyn picked up the box and opened it, revealing a faded photograph of a man and a dog, both smiling as they stood in front of the house. "This is my grandfather," Evelyn said, her voice thick with emotion. "He was a great man, a philanthropist, and this dog, Bella's ancestor, was his companion. But what you don't know is that Bella carries something with her, a secret that's been hidden for generations." Mark's eyes widened. "What secret?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Evelyn took a deep breath and handed him the photograph. "This house," she said, pointing to the building in the picture. "It was once the heart of my family's fortune. But after my grandfather passed, it was lost. And Bella, well, she's the key to finding it again. The treasure my family hid away for safekeeping." Mark's mind raced as he processed what Evelyn had just revealed. A hidden treasure? A family fortune? He couldn't believe what he was hearing. But there was something about the way Evelyn spoke, the way her eyes glistened with the weight of the story, that made him feel like this wasn't some wild fantasy. This was real. "So you want me to help you find this treasure?" Mark asked, still trying to grasp the enormity of the situation. Evelyn nodded. "I can't do this alone. And Bella, she's the one who will guide us to it." Mark looked at Bella, who was now sitting calmly at his feet, her eyes watching him intently. He couldn't explain it, but something inside him felt an undeniable connection to the dog, like they were bound together by some invisible force. He had always been a man of action, trained to face danger head-on, but this was different. This wasn't about combat. It was about a journey that would take him into the heart of a mystery that had been hidden for decades. "All right," Mark said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "I'll help you find it, but we need to be careful. We don't know who else might be after this treasure." Evelyn's expression turned serious. "I know, but we have no choice now. We have to do this. For Bella, and for my family." Mark looked down at Bella one last time, a sense of purpose settling in his chest. This was no longer just a rescue mission. It was the beginning of something far greater, and he was ready to face whatever came next. The next morning, Mark and Evelyn set out with Bella, driving toward the mansion that once belonged to Evelyn's family. The air was thick with anticipation as Mark steered the truck along the winding roads. Bella sat calmly in the back seat, her amber eyes fixed on the road ahead. The storm had passed, but the tension in the air seemed to cling to everything, as if the world itself was holding its breath. As they approached the mansion, the imposing gates came into view, their rusted ironwork telling stories of better days long gone. Mark slowed the truck and pulled into the driveway, which was lined with towering trees that seemed to whisper secrets of the past. Evelyn's eyes were distant, lost in the memories of a time when this place was full of life. She had grown up here, surrounded by luxury and comfort, but now the mansion stood silent, a shadow of its former self. As they stepped out of the truck, the weight of the journey ahead settled on Mark's shoulders. He had no idea what kind of secrets lay hidden within these walls, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't walking away until he had answers. "This place, it's like a ghost," Evelyn said, her voice heavy with emotion. "My grandfather built it with his own hands. It was the heart of our family's legacy. But after he passed, it all went downhill. The treasure, the history, it all got lost." Mark nodded, understanding the weight of what she was saying. He wasn't just helping her find a treasure. He was helping her reclaim a part of her past, a part of herself that had been buried beneath the years. They made their way up the steps, and Evelyn unlocked the door with a key she had kept hidden for years. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, musty interior. Dust covered the furniture, and the air smelled stale, as if the house had been sealed off from the world for too long. Mark stepped inside, his boots echoing against the hardwood floors. He could feel the history in the walls, the stories they held, waiting to be uncovered. "We need to start in the study," Evelyn said, leading him down a narrow hallway. The study was at the end, its door slightly ajar. Inside, shelves lined the walls, filled with old books and papers. Evelyn moved quickly, her eyes scanning the room. She pulled a dusty leather-bound book from the shelf and opened it, flipping through the pages until she stopped at a worn map. "This is it," she said, her voice steady now. "This map was my grandfather's. He used it to mark the location of the treasure. It's hidden right here in this house." Mark leaned over to look at the map, tracing the lines with his finger. There, at the back of the property, was an X marked with a red ink. "We need to go there," Evelyn said, her determination clear. Mark nodded, feeling the excitement building inside him. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. They weren't just going to find a treasure, they were going to find the key to everything. Together, with Bella by their side, they walked deeper into the mansion, ready to unlock the secrets that had been hidden for so long. As Mark and Evelyn made their way deeper into the mansion, the air grew colder, the silence heavy with anticipation. The walls seemed to close in, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to be revealed. Bella, walking closely beside them, paused every now and then, her sharp eyes scanning the shadows, her ears perked. Mark noticed her behavior, sensing there was more to this than just a treasure hunt. There was a deeper connection at play, one that neither of them fully understood yet. They reached the back of the mansion, near the old kitchen, where the map had marked the location. Evelyn motioned to a set of large cabinets that stood near the wall. "This is it," she whispered. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for a hidden latch behind the cabinet, pulling it open to reveal a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Mark felt a shiver run down his spine as he glanced at Evelyn. "You've been here before?" he asked quietly. She nodded, her face pale. "When I was a child, I was told never to come down here. My grandfather said it was the heart of the house, but he never explained why." Mark's curiosity piqued, but he didn't speak. Together, they descended the stairs, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick layers of dust that covered the stone floor. At the bottom, they found themselves in a large, dimly lit room, the walls lined with old bookshelves and wooden crates. The air smelled musty, like the passage of time itself had been trapped here, unable to escape. "There's something here," Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. She walked toward one of the bookshelves, her fingers brushing over the spines of the old books. "This room was sealed off for a reason, Mark. My grandfather was protecting something important." Mark stood beside her, scanning the room. His eyes fell on an old desk at the far end, and as he approached, he noticed a faint glow coming from beneath it. Without a word, Evelyn crouched down and began to pull at the wooden desk. It creaked, resisting at first, but then slowly began to move. A hidden compartment was revealed underneath, and inside there was a small ornate box. "This is it," Evelyn breathed, her eyes wide with disbelief. She reached for the box, her hands shaking as she lifted it from its resting place. Mark stood back, watching as she carefully opened it. Inside was a collection of old papers, a few faded photographs, and a small key. The key was tarnished, its metal worn with age, but it glinted in the dim light, as if it held the power to unlock the mystery of the house. Evelyn took the key in her hand, her expression a mixture of awe and fear. "This key," she said softly, "it opened something else. Something bigger than this room." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. The pieces were starting to come together, but they still didn't know the whole story. "What does it open?" he asked, his voice low. Evelyn hesitated, her eyes shifting toward the door at the far end of the room. "There's another part of this house," she said. "A place that no one knows about, not even my family. And I think this key will take us there." With Bella by their side, the three of them made their way toward the door, their steps echoing in the cold silence. Mark couldn't shake the feeling that this journey was about to reveal truths he wasn't prepared for. But there was no turning back now. The mansion held its secrets tightly, and it was up to them to uncover them. Evelyn turned the key in the lock, and as the door creaked open, a hidden world inside the mansion slowly began to unfold before them. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow hallway bathed in dim light. Mark, Evelyn, and Bella stepped inside, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust that had settled over everything. The air felt different here, heavy with the weight of untold secrets, as if the house itself was waiting for them to uncover what had been hidden for so long. Evelyn's hand trembled slightly as she held the key, the one they had found in the compartment beneath the desk. She glanced back at Mark, her expression a mixture of excitement and fear. "This is it," she whispered. Mark nodded, his heart racing. He had no idea what they were about to find, but he knew one thing. This was no longer just about the treasure. It was about the truth, the history that had been buried for generations. They walked down the hallway, Bella trotting beside them, her eyes alert as if sensing something ahead. The walls were lined with faded paintings, their colors muted by time. The further they went, the darker it became, and the more oppressive the silence felt. At the end of the hallway, they reached another door, this one old and worn, its wood warped by the years. Evelyn stepped forward and inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click, and the door creaked open to reveal a room that looked untouched by time. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and the faint scent of old paper lingered in the air. At the center of the room was a large table covered with maps and documents. Mark's eyes were immediately drawn to a large, intricate map spread out on the table. It was old, the edges tattered, but was clear that it depicted the mansion and the surrounding land. "This is it," Evelyn said, her voice filled with awe. She ran her fingers over the map, tracing the paths with her eyes. "This is where my grandfather hid everything, his wealth, his legacy. And now it's all here in this room." Mark stepped closer, studying the map. It was detailed, more than anything he had expected. There were markings all over it, some of which were unfamiliar to him. But there, at the center of the mansion, was a symbol he recognized, a symbol that matched the one they had seen on the photograph in the study. Evelyn noticed his gaze and smiled faintly. "That symbol," she said, "it represents the heart of the house, the place where my grandfather hid his most valuable possession." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. The heart of the house. He had a feeling that whatever was hidden, there was more than just gold or jewels. It was something far more important. "So, where do we go from here?" Mark asked, his voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline he felt. Evelyn turned toward the far corner of the room, where a large, ancient-looking chest stood. It was covered in dust, as if no one had touched it in years. She approached it slowly, her hand trembling as she lifted the lid. Inside, there was nothing but an old, leather-bound book. "This is it," she whispered. "The key to everything." Mark reached out, his fingers brushing the spine of the book. The moment his hand touched it, a sudden warmth spread through his fingertips, as if the book itself was alive. Evelyn opened it, and the pages revealed intricate drawings and notes in a language Mark didn't recognize. "This is the legacy my grandfather left behind," Evelyn said softly. "And it's the key to everything, our past, our future. But there's something you need to know, Mark. We're not the only ones looking for it." Mark's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice low. Evelyn's eyes met his, her expression serious. "There are others who know about the treasure, Mark, and they will stop at nothing to find it." The room seemed to grow colder as the weight of her words settled over them. Bella barked softly, as if sensing the danger ahead. Mark felt a new sense of urgency. They weren't just uncovering history. They were stepping into a story that was far bigger than they had imagined. And the journey was about to take a dangerous turn. Mark's heart raced as he stared at Evelyn, her words, hanging in the air like a shadow. Others were looking for the treasure. Others who would stop at nothing to find it. He glanced down at the old book in her hands, the pages filled with symbols and drawings he couldn't understand. Every part of him screamed to find the treasure before anyone else did, but the weight of Evelyn's words lingered. Who else knew? And why were they so determined to stop them? "How do we stop them?" Mark asked, his voice steady, though the anxiety in his chest was growing. Evelyn looked at the book again, her brow furrowed. "I don't know. My grandfather kept so much hidden, but he was always secretive about certain things, especially when it came to the treasure. He knew people would come looking for it, and he did everything he could to keep it safe." She paused for a moment, clearly lost in thought. "But there's one thing he said, something I've never fully understood until now." Mark leaned in, eager for any clue that could give them an edge. "What did he say?" Evelyn opened the book to a specific page and pointed to a phrase written in the margins. "He said, the key is not just in the treasure, but in the heart that guards it." I never understood what that meant, but now, I think I do. Mark stared at the words, the meaning slowly dawning on him. "The heart," he repeated, glancing around the room. "You think the treasure is hidden in the house itself? In the structure?" Evelyn nodded slowly. "I think it's more than that. I think the house was built to protect it, to keep it from falling into the wrong hands. My grandfather was a smart man. He knew what people were capable of. He left a trail, yes, but also obstacles. The treasure isn't just about finding the right spot. It's about understanding the house, understanding what it was built to protect." Mark felt the weight of her words. They weren't just searching for gold or jewels. They were searching for something far deeper, something that could change everything. He looked down at Bella, who had been quietly sitting by their side, watching them intently. "What do you think, girl?" he asked, his voice soft. Bella's ears perked up, and she stood, moving toward the far corner of the room. Mark watched her, confused. She was acting strange, like she sensed something. Without a word, Evelyn followed Bella's lead, and Mark trailed behind. The dog stopped in front of a large painting on the wall, its frame covered in dust. Evelyn glanced at it, then reached up to remove it. "This might be it," she murmured, pulling the painting away to reveal a hidden door. Mark's breath caught in his throat. Behind the painting was a door he hadn't noticed before, a small, narrow passage that seemed to lead deep into the heart of the mansion. Evelyn stepped forward, her fingers tracing the edge of the door. "This is it," she whispered. "This is where it all began." Mark could feel the adrenaline building, the thrill of discovery pulsing through him. He glanced at Evelyn, who was now more determined than ever. They had come this far, and there was no turning back. They were about to uncover what had been hidden for so long. With one last look at Bella, who now stood beside them, ready for whatever lay ahead, Mark turned the handle and opened the door, revealing the path that would lead them into the mansion's deepest secret. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow, dimly lit hallway. Mark's breath caught in his chest as he stepped forward, his boots echoing on the old wooden floor. The air was musty, filled with the scent of time and dust, a smell that seemed to cling to the walls and the very fabric of the house. Bella, who had been walking beside them, suddenly stopped, her ears alert, her body stiff. Mark turned to look at her, sensing that something was off. Evelyn, too, had noticed. She glanced at Mark, her face pale. "She's sensing something," she whispered. Mark nodded, his instincts telling him that they were getting closer to something important. The passageway seemed to stretch on forever, winding deeper into the heart of the mansion. The farther they went, the darker it became, and Mark could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. The mansion, once full of life, now felt like a tomb, silent, waiting for the past to be uncovered. They reached the end of the hallway, where a large iron door stood, its surface scratched and scarred by years of neglect. Evelyn reached for the handle, her hand trembling as she touched the cold metal. "This is it," she said, her voice barely audible. "Behind this door is what we've been looking for." Mark felt a surge of adrenaline as he stepped closer. There was no turning back now. With a deep breath, he turned the handle, and the door creaked open, revealing a room that took his breath away. The room was vast, its high ceilings supported by stone pillars that seemed to reach toward the sky. The walls were lined with ancient books, scrolls, and artifacts, their presence a testament to the wealth and history of Evelyn's family. But it was the center of the room that caught Mark's attention. A large, stone pedestal stood in the middle, its surface covered in intricate carvings. On top of the pedestal rested a small, ornate chest. Evelyn stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the chest, her breath shallow. "This is it," she whispered. "The treasure." Mark's heart raced as he approached, his footsteps silent on the cold stone floor. As he reached the pedestal, he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This was the culmination of everything they had been through. The hidden treasure, the secrets of the house, and the legacy of Evelyn's family. But there was something else, something deeper. The room felt alive, as if the house itself was watching them. Evelyn carefully lifted the chest, her hands shaking as she placed it in Mark's hands. "Open it," she urged. Mark hesitated for a moment, his fingers brushing against the smooth surface of the chest. He could feel the weight of the years pressing down on him, the weight of the past. With a deep breath, he opened the chest. Inside, there was a collection of old, faded documents, a few pieces of jewelry, and a small, intricately carved key. Mark picked up the key, his fingers running over its surface. There was something familiar about it, but he couldn't quite place it. "This is it," Evelyn said, her voice trembling. "This is the key to everything." Mark looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Evelyn stepped forward, her eyes filled with a mixture of awe and fear. "The key opens a door, another door. The final door. The one my grandfather kept hidden." Mark felt his pulse quicken. There was more? Another hidden door? He glanced at the chest, his mind racing. "Where is it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn pointed toward the far wall, where a small door was hidden behind a tapestry. "It's there," she said. "The final secret." Mark felt a surge of determination. They had come this far, and he wasn't about to stop now. With the key in his hand, he walked toward the wall, his heart pounding in his chest. As he reached for the door, Bella let out a soft bark, as if urging him to hurry. Mark turned the key in the lock, and the door creaked open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down. "This is it," Evelyn whispered. "The heart of the house." Mark took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to uncover the last secret of the mansion. The journey had only just begun, and he could feel the weight of history pushing him forward, guiding him into the unknown. Mark stepped cautiously into the narrow staircase, his hand gripping the key that had led them this far. The air was colder down here, and the stone steps beneath him felt damp, as if they had been untouched for years. Evelyn followed closely behind, her face a mixture of awe and nervous anticipation. Bella, ever watchful, padded silently beside them, her ears flicking at every creak and groan of the old house. The stairs seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning in ways that made Mark feel like they were descending deeper into the very heart of the mansion. The further they went, the darker it became, until even the faint light from above seemed to fade completely. Mark reached for the flashlight in his pocket, flicking it on. The beam illuminated the walls, revealing old paintings and faded portraits, their eyes seeming to follow them as they passed. There was a strange stillness in the air, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Finally, they reached the bottom of the stairs, where a heavy wooden door stood, locked tight. Mark could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he stepped forward, the key in his hand trembling slightly. He slid the key into the lock, and with a deep breath turned. The door groaned in protest, but it slowly creaked open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the walls were lined with shelves, all filled with books, scrolls, and old artifacts. At the center of the room stood a stone pedestal, upon which rested a small, intricately carved box. It was covered in a layer of dust, as if it had been waiting for centuries. Evelyn stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. "This is it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "This is the heart of the house." Mark walked closer to the pedestal, his steps slow and deliberate. The room felt like a sanctuary hidden away from the world above. There was a sense of reverence in the air, as if the very ground beneath them held something sacred. Mark reached out, his fingers brushing against the box. It was cool to the touch, smooth and polished, with delicate carvings etched into its surface. Evelyn's breath caught as she watched him. "Open it," she urged, her voice thick with anticipation. Mark hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of the moment. This was it, the culmination of everything they had been searching for. With a deep breath, he lifted the box from the pedestal and opened it. Inside, there was nothing but a small, worn envelope. Mark picked it up, his fingers trembling as he opened it. Inside, there was a letter written in elegant script and a small, faded photograph. He read the letter aloud, his voice steady but filled with awe. "To my beloved family," he began, "if you are reading this, then you have found what I have hidden away. This is not just a treasure. It is the legacy of our family, the key to our future. The true treasure is not in wealth or jewels, but in the knowledge and wisdom passed down through the generations. Use this wisely, for it is the key to everything we have built." Mark paused, his eyes scanning the letter for more. Evelyn was standing next to him, her eyes filled with tears. "It's all here," she whispered. "The legacy, it's not about gold or diamonds. It's about what my grandfather left behind, the knowledge, the wisdom. This is the true treasure." Mark looked at the photograph, which showed a younger version of Evelyn's grandfather standing proudly in front of the mansion. He could see the pride in the man's eyes, a sense of purpose and determination that had carried him through the years. Mark felt a sense of peace wash over him. This was the treasure, the knowledge that Evelyn's family had preserved for generations, waiting for the right person to uncover it. "We found it," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "And now it's ours to protect." Evelyn nodded, her tears falling freely now. "It's not just mine to protect," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "It's ours, together." As they stood in that small, forgotten room, with the weight of history in their hands, Mark realized that the journey was far from over. They had uncovered the past, but now it was time to build the future together. With Bella by their side, the three of them stood in the heart of the mansion, ready to carry the legacy forward, guarding the treasure that was far greater than gold, the knowledge that would shape their destiny.